The heavy ceramic bowl shattered against the mud wall, missing Mokepe's head by mere inches. Fragments of palm nut soup splattered across her wrapper, staining the fabric that stretched tight over her 7-month-old pregnancy. She didn't scream. She only closed her eyes and let out a shaky breath as the stench of fermented palm wine filled the small room. Shola stood over her, his eyes bloodshot and his chest heaving with an unearned rage. "Give me the money, Mokepe," he roared, his voice cracking the morning silence. "I know you hid the proceeds from the yam sales under the sleeping mat. I am the head of this house and I will not be questioned by a woman who thinks her belly gives her power over me." Mokekwe looked up at him, her eyes brimming with a mixture of exhaustion and a love that was rapidly rotting into pity. "Shola, please," she whispered, her hand instinctively shielding her bump. "That money is for the midwife. The baby is coming soon, and the clinic in the next village won't take us without a deposit. I have walked from dawn till dusk in the sun for this." Shola didn't listen. He lunged forward, grabbing her by the shoulders and shaking her. The physical shock sent a jolt of pain through her lower back. "The baby will be fine. I have a business deal, a cocoa plantation lead that will make us richer than the Bale himself. Do you want our son to be born in a hut or a palace? Give it to me." Before we dive deeper into this web of lies and see how Mokebe handles the ultimate betrayal, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story of justice and strength. Trust me, you want to see what happens to Shola in the end. With a heavy heart, Mokekwe reached under the mat and handed him the small pouch of cowries and crumpled naira notes. The transformation in Shola was instantaneous and terrifying. The monster vanished, replaced by the smooth-talking charmer who had won her heart 3 years ago. He pulled her into his arms, his grip firm but suddenly loving. He pressed his lips against hers in a deep, forceful kiss that tasted of gin and desperation. "You see, my beautiful wife," he murmured against her mouth, his hands wandering over her back. "I do this for us. Soon you will be wearing the finest lace in Oyo. You won't have to touch a hole ever again." He kissed her again, more tenderly this time, a manipulative sweetness that Mokekwe hated herself for enjoying. She needed to believe the lie just to get through the day. As he stepped out of the house, whistling a jaunty tune, Mokekwe sank to the floor, the cold mud pressing against her knees. She had given him 70% of her earnings, and only 30% of her strength was left to face the farm. She spent the next 4 hours under the unforgiving sun. Every swing of the hoe was a battle against the weight of her child. Her breath came in ragged gasps. "Just a little more," she whispered to herself, "for the baby." By midday, her best friend Abieni appeared. Abieni was a seamstress, and today she looked particularly radiant in a yellow buba that looked brand new. "Mokekbe, my sister, why are you still in the debt?" Abieni cried, rushing over. She took the hoe from Mokekbe's trembling hands. "A woman in your condition should be treated like a queen. Where is that husband of yours?" Mokekbe wiped the sweat from her brow. "He's working on a cocoa deal, Abieni. He needed the market money to finalize it." Abieni's eyes flickered, a strange, sharp look that passed as quickly as a shadow. She sat Mokekbe down under a baobab tree and began rubbing her shoulders. "You are a virtuous woman, Mokekbe. Men are like fire. If you tend them correctly, they warm the house. If you don't, they burn it down. You must be patient. Shola will change. I saw him earlier and he spoke so highly of your devotion. He truly loves you." Abieni leaned in and kissed Mokekbe's cheek. That was when Mokekbe smelt it, a scent so rich and floral it didn't belong in a farm field. "Abieni, you smell wonderful. Is that lavender?" Abieni laughed, a silver, tinkling sound that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, a gift from a distant cousin in Lagos. Don't worry about me. Let's talk about you. You must keep supporting Shola. If he feels like a king, he will act like one. Do not let the fire go out, my friend." Mokekle watched Abieni walk away, her hips swaying with a confidence that felt like a slap in the face. Mokekbe returned to work, but the seeds of doubt were growing faster than the yams. That evening, instead of going straight home, Mokekbe took a detour past the palm wine shack near the village square. She hid behind a cluster of hibiscus bushes, her heart hammering against her ribs. There he was. Shola wasn't meeting cocoa brokers. He was sitting on a bench, laughing loudly, buying rounds of drinks for men who called him chief. Mokekbe felt a wave of nausea. But then, the real blow came. A woman emerged from the shadows behind the shack. She was wearing a heavy shawl over her head, but Mokekbe recognized the walk. She leaned down and whispered into Shola's ear. Shola's face lit up with a hunger he hadn't shown Mokekbe in months. He stood up, grabbed the woman's hand and pulled her into the dark alleyway behind the building. Mokekbe crept closer, her stomach churning. She peeked around the corner. Shola had the woman pressed against the rough timber wall. He was kissing her with a ferocity that made Mokekbe's blood run cold. His hands were everywhere, tracing the curves of a body that wasn't swollen with pregnancy. The woman giggled, her shawl slipping just enough for the moonlight to catch her face. It was Abieni. Mokekbe gasped, a sound so sharp she was sure they heard it. A sudden violent contraction seized her abdomen, forcing her to double over. The pain was like a white-hot wire being pulled through her spine. By the time she could breathe again and looked back, the alleyway was empty. They were gone. Mokekbe stumbled home in a daze. She sat in the darkness of her room for hours. When Shola finally returned, stumbling over the threshold and smelling of gin and that unmistakable lavender oil, Mokekbe didn't move. "Where have you been, Shola?" she asked, her voice a low, dangerous vibration. Shola slammed a wooden cup on the table. "I told you, business. The brokers from the city are difficult. Why are you sitting here like a ghost? Did you cook or were you busy feeling sorry for yourself?" He walked over to her, his breath foul. He tried to pull her into a kiss, his lips wet and sloppy. "Come on, Mokekbe, don't be like that. I'm doing this for us." Mokekbe pushed him away with a strength she didn't know she had. "Don't touch me, Shola. I smell the cocoa on you. It smells like lavender." Shola's eyes widened for a split second before turning into slits of ice. "Are you accusing me of something? After I spent all day trying to build a future? You are ungrateful, just like your mother." He lunged at her, not to kiss her, but to grab her arm. He squeezed until she winced. "You will learn your place, Mokekbe, or I will find someone who knows theirs." He threw her arm back at her and stormed out into the night, leaving Mokekbe alone with a pain in her heart that was far worse than the contractions in her womb. The war had begun. Mokekbe did not sleep that night. She sat on the edge of the mat, her hands resting on her belly, watching the moon crawl across the sky. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Shola's hands on Abieni's waist. Every time she breathed, she smelled the ghost of lavender in the room. By the first cock crow, her tears had dried into a hard, salty crust. She was no longer the victim. She was a woman waking up to a battlefield. She spent the morning performing her chores with a terrifying precision. She swept the compound until the dirt was as smooth as glass. She washed Shola's clothes, but as she scrubbed his tunics, she didn't use the gentle touch of a loving wife. She pounded the fabric against the stones, imagining she was crushing the lies out of the fibers. When she found a long, thin strand of hair on his collar, hair that was braided in the intricate style that Abieni had debuted yesterday, Mokekbe didn't cry.
She simply tucked the hair into a small pouch in her wrapper. She headed to the market, but her basket was light. She wasn't there to sell. She was there to observe. She saw Abeni sitting at her store, surrounded by vibrant silks and expensive lace. Abeni looked like a woman who had won a lottery. She was humming a song, her needle dancing through a piece of fabric. Mokbe walked up to her, her face a mask of calm. "Good morning, my sister," Mokbe said, her voice steady. Abeni jumped, nearly dropping her shears. "Mokbe, you startled me. You look different today. Did Sola give you good news about the cocoa?" Mokbe sat on the low stool, leaning in close so their knees touched. "The cocoa is growing, Abeni. In fact, I saw the plantation last night. It was hidden in the shadows behind the palm wine shack. It was a very lush crop." The color drained from Abeni's face, leaving her a sickly shade of grey. She forced a laugh that sounded like dry leaves. "I don't know what you mean, Mokbe. You're talking in riddles. Is the pregnancy making your head spin?" Mope reached out and took Abeni's hand. Her grip was tight, the skin of her palm rough from years of farming. My head is very clear, Abeni. I smelled the lavender on Sola last night. It's a very strong scent. It clings to everything it touches, even his soul. Abeni pulled her hand away, her eyes darting around the market to see if anyone was listening. You are being dramatic. Sola loves you. He told me just yesterday that he's doing everything for the baby. Don't be an ungrateful wife. It's a sin. Abeni stood up, turning her back to Mope to organize her thread. It was a dismissal, but Mope wasn't finished. You are right, Abeni. Sin is a heavy thing. It's a wonder some people can walk at all with so much of it on their shoulders. Mope left the market and headed toward the outskirts of the village, past the last of the yam bands, to a place where the trees grew thick and the air felt heavy with the scent of damp earth and old secrets. This was the domain of Baba Agba. He was a man who didn't care for village gossip or the crowns of husbands. He dealt in the balance of the universe. The old man was sitting outside his hut, sorting dried roots. He didn't look up as Mope approached. The child in your womb is restless, he said, his voice like grinding stones. He feels his mother's heart beating like a war drum. Mope knelt before him. I want justice, Baba. Not for me, but for the child. My husband has stolen the boy's future to feed a snake. Baba Agba looked at her then, his one good eye milky but piercing. Justice is a fire, daughter. It does not choose what it burns. Are you prepared to stand in the smoke? Mope pulled the pouch from her wrapper, the one containing the strand of Abeni's hair and a piece of thread she had snitched from Sola's tunic. I have lived in the smoke for years, Baba. It is time for them to feel the heat. The old man took the items and began to weave them together with a dark, fibrous twine. As he worked, he spoke of the magun, the thunderbolt. It was a traditional binding, a spiritual lock that would ensure that hidden sins were brought into the light in the most physical, undeniable way possible. This is not for killing, Baba Agba whispered. This is for the 7 days of shame. When they touch in the dark, they will be joined in the light. There will be a single body of sin for the whole village to see. They will not be able to pull apart until the 7th sun sets. Mope took the braided twine, her fingers trembling. This was the point of no return. If she did this, her marriage was over. Her reputation would be tied to a scandal that would be told for generations. But as she thought of the 70% of her earnings Sola had spent on gin and lace while she bled in the fields, her heart hardened. She paid the old man with the last of her hidden coins and walked back to the village. That night, the escalation reached a fever pitch. Sola came home late again, but this time he was in a foul mood. He had lost money gambling and was looking for a target. Why is there no meat in the soup? He screamed, kicking over a stool. Mope stood by the fire, her hand inside her pocket gripping the twine. There is no meat because there is no money, Sola. You took it all. Sola marched over to her, his hand raised. I told you never to speak to me like that. I am the man of this house. He grabbed her by the hair, pulling her head back. Mope didn't flinch. She looked him straight in the eyes. You are a thief, Sola. You steal from your wife. You steal from your unborn son. And you think the shadows hide you? They don't. Sola's face twisted in a mask of pure hate. He raised his hand to strike her, but a sudden sharp pain shot through his own arm, causing him to stagger back. He looked at his hand confused. Mope didn't wait. She moved toward him, her voice a low, haunting whisper. Go to her, Sola. Go to your lavender-scented queen. She is waiting for you, isn't she? Sola sneered, recovering his bravado. Since you are so smart, yes, she is 10 times the woman you are. She doesn't smell like sweat and dirt. She smells like a dream. I'm leaving and don't expect me back tonight. He grabbed his tunic and stormed out. He didn't notice Mope's hand brush against the fabric of his sleeve as he passed, a light touch that anchored the twine's power to his body. Mope followed him at a distance. She watched him move through the village, avoiding the main paths, toward the small seamstress shop where Abeni lived. She saw the door open, a sliver of light spilling out, and heard Abeni's high, flirtatious giggle. The door clicked shut. Mope stood in the darkness outside the shop. She could hear them inside, the clinking of glasses, the sound of the blue lace being unrolled, and then the quiet, intimate sounds of betrayal. She felt a tear fall, but she wiped it instantly. 7 days, she whispered to the night. 7 days for the world to see you for what you are. Suddenly, a muffled shout erupted from inside the shop. It was followed by another, then a desperate guttural cry that could only belong to Sola. Mope froze outside, her heart thumping a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She heard frantic scrambling, objects crashing against the walls, and then a strange, desperate panting. It wasn't the sound of lovers, it was the sound of animals caught in a trap. Within minutes, the commotion drew the attention of the nearest villagers. A lamp was lit in a nearby hut, then another. Soon, a small crowd began to gather, murmuring questions. What is that noise? Is Abeni in trouble? Mope remained in the shadows, her presence unseen, her face devoid of emotion. The frantic cries intensified. I can't move, Abeni shrieked, her voice hoarse with terror. Sola, what is this? I'm stuck. Sola's own voice, usually so booming and arrogant, was now a whimper. My legs! I can't separate. It feels like something is holding us. The villagers, now a growing crowd, armed with lamps and torches, began to knock loudly on Abeni's door. Abeni! Sola, open this door! The door, however, remained stubbornly shut, seemingly held fast by an unseen force. Fear began to ripple through the crowd. This was not the sound of a simple domestic quarrel. This was something ancient, something that spoke of curses and powerful magic. Then, with a shuddering creak, the door slowly, unwillingly began to open. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Sola and Abeni were standing just inside, bound together in a grotesque, unnatural embrace. They were not simply holding each other. Their bodies seemed to be fused at the hip, as if an invisible, unbreakable chain held them in an agonizing, intimate knot. Sola's wrapper was askew, his tunic ripped. Abeni's yellow buba, so vibrant just yesterday, was stained and crumpled, stretched taut over their entangled forms. The blue lace Mope had seen Abeni working on lay tangled on the floor around them. Their faces were contorted with horror and agony. Sweat streamed down their brows, mixing with tears of shame. They tried to pull apart, grunting and straining, but they were stuck. The more they struggled, the more painful their bond seemed to become. Get us apart, Sola roared, his voice cracking with humiliation. Abeni, usually so composed and flirtatious, was sobbing hysterically. My body! What has happened to my body? Oh, the shame! The villagers stared, their initial fear slowly giving way to a mixture of morbid fascination and grim satisfaction. Whispers began to spread like wildfire. Magoon, someone breathed. The thunderbolt! It catches adulterers. Another one added. So Sola's cocoa deal was with Abeni? Laughter, cold and cruel, rippled through the crowd. Mope stepped out of the shadows, her belly prominent, her eyes fixed on the spectacle. She did not speak, did not mock. She simply looked at them, letting her presence be felt. Sola's eyes found her, and for the first time, Mope saw true, naked fear in his gaze, mixed with a profound, bone-deep shame. Abeni, usually so composed and flirtatious, was sobbing hysterically. See, Mope, my body is not working properly. It's fizzing. 7 days, someone shouted from the crowd. The curse lasts for 7 market days. They will be joined until the 7th sun sets. The news spread throughout the village by morning. Sola and Abeni were paraded through the market square, a spectacle of their own making. People pointed. Children, innocent of the full meaning, giggled. Women, remembering Mope's quiet suffering, spat on the ground near them. Sola, the proud chief, now walked with his head bowed, his body a prisoner to his sin. Abeni, the elegant seamstress, stumbled beside him, her face a blotchy mess of tears and debt. Mope went about her duties. She went to the farm, then to the market to sell her vegetables. She did not look at them directly, but she felt their eyes on her. She knew they understood. Her silence was her greatest weapon. She had endured.
Now they would endure. During the 3rd day of their public shaming, a group of village elders, including the venerable Bale,
approached Mope. "Mope," the Bale said gently, "we have seen what has happened. It is a great sadness but also a great truth. You have borne much in silence." He handed her a sealed leather pouch. These were found in Sola's belongings in the small box he kept hidden. "We believe they belong to you. He had no right to them." Mope opened the pouch with trembling fingers. Inside were not just her market ledgers, detailing every yam and pepper sold, every cowrie earned. There were also land deeds to the very plots of land she had inherited from her father, which Sola had subtly coerced her into signing over to him, claiming it was for the future of the cocoa business. And then there was a small, crudely drawn map. It showed no cocoa plantation. Instead, it pointed to a large, unmarked area of rich farmland far from the village. In the corner, scrawled in Sola's hurried hand, were the words, "New home with Abeni after Mope gives birth. Sell old hut." Mope's breath hitched. Sola hadn't just been cheating on her. He had been planning to abandon her and their newborn son, leaving them destitute once she had served her purpose of delivering an heir. The cocoa business was a lie, a scheme to steal her inheritance and start a new life with Abeni. The pain in her heart intensified, but this time it was a cold, righteous fury. The Magon had exposed their infidelity, but these papers exposed their utter cruelty. She looked at the Bali, her eyes flashing. "Thank you, Bali. The truth is indeed a powerful thing." She clutched the deeds and the map tightly. Her heart pounded with a renewed purpose. She hadn't just saved her dignity, she had saved her son's future. Sola and Abeni were being shamed for their affair, but Mope now held the proof of a deeper, more malicious betrayal. On the 6th day, the villagers held a small ceremony. Sola and Abeni, still bound, were brought before the ancestral shrine. Baba Agba performed a ritual, chanting ancient words. He placed a hand on their joined bodies, and a visible shudder passed through them. Their agony was palpable. Mope watched from a distance, her hand resting protectively on her belly. The baby kicked, a strong, reassuring flutter. As the sun began to set on the 7th day, casting long shadows across the village square, Baba Agba struck a ceremonial gong. He raised his hand, and with a final resonant chant, the binding was released. Sola and Abeni fell apart, stumbling away from each other as if burned. They collapsed onto the dusty ground, gasping, their bodies aching, but their shame even greater. They tried to crawl away in opposite directions, desperate to escape each other, desperate to escape the hundreds of eyes fixed upon them. The Bale stepped forward, his voice grave. "Sola, Abeni, your sin has been laid bare for all to see. Your deception, both in spirit and in deed, has polluted this community. For this, the elders decree that you are banished. You may not live within these lands. You have until dawn to gather what little you have left and leave." The silence that followed was absolute. Sola and Abeni, broken and defeated, could only nod, their eyes unable to meet anyone's gaze. We're approaching the powerful conclusion of Mope's story. Before we see her rise from the ashes, take a moment to hit that like button if you believe in justice. And don't forget to subscribe and share this video with someone who needs a dose of strength. In the comments below, tell us what you think was the most shocking part of Sola and Abeni's betrayal, the affair or the hidden land deeds. The sun rose the next morning over a village that felt lighter, as if a fever had finally broken. Sola and Abeni were gone, fleeing into the grey mist of dawn with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the heavy weight of their ruined names. Mope stood in the center of her compound, watching the smoke from a small fire she had started. In it, she threw the remaining scraps of Sola's deceit, the false maps, the empty promises, and the lingering scent of lavender that had haunted her home. As the flames licked the air, Mope felt a sudden, sharp clarity. The weight she had been carrying for 7 months wasn't just the child in her womb, it was the burden of a man who never deserved her strength. She looked at the land deeds that the Bale had returned to her. These were her father's legacy, the soil she had bled over, and now they were the foundation of her freedom. 2 months later, the cry of a healthy baby boy pierced the air of the village. Mope named him Ifeanyichukwu, meaning nothing is impossible with God, a nod to the miracle of her own survival. But she did not remain the struggling widow the village expected. With the 70% of her earnings she no longer had to surrender to Sola's drinking habits, Mope began to invest. She didn't just farm, she organized. She brought together the other women of the market, those who had been overlooked and undervalued, and formed a cooperative. Within a year, the Mope cooperative became the largest supplier of yams and peppers in the region. She replaced her mud hut with a sturdy stone house, its roof shimmering under the sun. She was no longer just a woman toiling in the sun, she was a woman of substance. When people spoke of her now, they didn't speak of the woman whose husband betrayed her. They spoke of the woman who built an empire from the ashes of a lie. Meanwhile, rumors occasionally drifted back to the village about 2 beggars seen on the far outskirts of the city. They spoke of a man with a permanent limp and a woman whose face was always hidden behind a tattered shawl. 2 souls who seemed tethered by a mutual hatred they could never quite escape. They had found the palace Sola had promised, but it was a palace of dust and regret. Mope's story became a legend in the village, a cautionary tale whispered to young men about the price of greed, and a song of hope sung by women as they tilled their own fields. She had learned that patience without self-respect is just a slow way to die, but action paired with truth is the birth of a new world. As we reach the final moments of Mope's incredible transformation, we want to thank you for staying with us until the very end. This story is a reminder that no matter how deep the betrayal, your strength is yours to reclaim. Before you go, we have one final question for you. If you were Mope, would you ever consider forgiving Sola if he returned as a changed man years later? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below, and please let us know exactly where in the world you are watching from. We love reading your locations. If you found strength in Mope's journey, make sure to like this video, share it with a friend who needs to hear this today, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of justice and empowerment. Thank you for watching, and remember, your crown is yours to polish. Until next time.